I've come through this entire hurricane of TEDxColumbus, and I stand here in the center now, looking out, and I look and I think, you know, my God, this is a really well-designed habitat. Whoops. Need to have this right side up. It's a well-designed habitat. And it's a habitat because we bring all of these amazing ideas into one place and share them. Not a home where you live, but a place where you mix and share. And habitats are precise ecological areas where species are optimally suited to survive. So there are good habitat zones where movement is free and reproduction is flourishing and you're able to survive. And there are also bad habitats where you can survive, but you can't reproduce. And then finally, there are isolated habitats where survival's okay, but you can't get anywhere, so you can't reproduce and collapse is certain. And since we're all friends now, I want to let you in on one thing. The other thing I want to talk about is that all that other space around there, those are places where it might be not well suited for you, but it's great for something else. And I want to let you in on a little nightmare that I am occasionally wakened from sleep with, and I blame it on a student. I teach architecture students at the Knowlton School of Architecture, and we were researching global housing trends, and one of the students floated this one out to me. He said, in a time not too long ago, Siberian elderly were set adrift. They were effectively put on ice floes and removed from their habitat. And that's my nightmare, that I'll be removed from my habitat. And I started thinking about it, and this is one of the first projects that I worked on right out of graduate school. It's an assisted living and Alzheimer's care unit in Boston, but it could be anywhere, really. And the remarkable features, as I recall, first of all, it's on an urban strip, but it is completely isolated from that urban strip. It sits in the middle of a bucolic landscape. And as you walk up to it, you realize that the exterior is really plain and conventional. It's like a fortress, essentially. And when you move inside, it's a completely different experience. You move inside, and it's this rich, ornate, ornamental wallpaper which surrounds all of the public spaces. And when we worked on it, we made the bedrooms really small so that you were kind of enticed to move out to the wallpapered surfaces. And the way you would move from one wallpapered room to another wallpapered room was made as circuitous as possible to make it as interesting as possible within this fortress. And so thinking about the Siberian set adrift or this project that I worked on, I'm thinking about the fact that as I grow older, I will lose some control. I will move from independency to a point of dependency. So I'm an architect. Architects draw lines. Lines are, I always say lines are cheap, but they really have a lot of information behind each one. So like the habitat that I described, a line can be a thing which gives precision or definition to something. It can also be something which separates you from another thing, and that very same line can take you somewhere, maybe sometimes in very exhilarating fashion. And here's a line that I've been looking at a lot these days. It's my lifeline. And I'll give you another way to look at it. Here's a graph. So age is vertical and time is horizontal. That pink dot is where I am today. And so it's no secret that we're getting much, much older as a culture. In 1900, I could expect to live to 49. Today, I could expect to live to 78 if I'm average. And if I just keep drawing that line, I will cross the centenarian threshold by the end of this century. And why is this? Obviously, there are lots of reasons. We have many technological advances. We have pharmaceutical advances. We're much more conscious about what we put into our bodies. If I put myself on that line, and I'm 42 years old, but if I just stick myself on that line and I'm average, I could expect to live to age 90, no problem, as long as I don't smoke and I eat the right chocolate and all of those things. But maybe if there's even a little bit of luck and good fortune, maybe I can be 104 too. Maybe I can cross that threshold as well. And what would that mean? Certainly, I'm not going to be alone. First of all, today in this country, 13% of our population is age 65 or older. By the time I turn 104, that number will be 23% of the population age 65 and older. And in terms of my fellow centenarians, which number 450,000 worldwide today, that number will be 10 times that. Willard Scott won't even be able to keep up. So what does it all mean? How will I make this meaningful? I'm going to have to be more active than ever before. So Wii bowling, no, not for me. I'm certain of that. Faya Singh just became the world's first centenarian marathon runner 2 weeks ago in Toronto, and he credits this amazing achievement to his Spartan diet of ginger and tea, plus a lot of smiling. So maybe I need to add that to my to-do list. But I think all of these things, there's one big change that will transform the way we design habitats, and I think that one big change is here, the dependency ratio. The dependency ratio looks at the relationship between people of working age in a society and people who are retired. And currently, that dependency ratio is what you see here, about 3.5 workers to 1 retiree. By the time I'm 82, in just 40 years, that's the shift. That's the dependency ratio right there. So instead of 3.5, it's 1.6 to 1 retiree. The dependency ratio nearly flatlines. And what does that mean? I mean, obviously, there is a lot of discussion about this flatlining of the dependency ratio. From retirement age, like if we raise the retirement age, we can adjust it again. There are all sorts of schemes, frankly, to adjust this. And I wonder what it means for habitats. So the first thing that I thought about is we need to look at the patterns of our existing habitat, the way we may figure our existing habitat, the primary patterns, maybe not the absolute patterns, but primary patterns. So we're in a culture, a democracy, an independent culture. It's based on independence, not dependence, but independence. So we have stuff, we have land. The Homestead Act says, okay, let's divide the land. Let's make it so everyone has their own 40 acres, their own piece of turf. And then once we do that, once we distribute this landscape and distribute the population, then we have to figure out how do we connect it again. So we go underground and we say, okay, let's do it as quietly as possible. We'll do it infrastructurally. We'll reconnect all of this stuff. Maybe we'll even come up with new ways of making land ownership, like mining rights that go underneath all of these 40 acres. And then when that's full, when the underground is full, maybe we'll do air rights. So we'll build over all of this stuff. And maybe that's also how we can densify in big urban areas. And once we start to understand these rules of division and independence, then maybe we start to curate that. And we start to find self-similar situations, like a bunch of houses that all kind of look the same. So we draw a line around them and we say, okay, these are subdivisions. So we'll live in these subdivisions where we'll all kind of be self-similar. Or we'll kind of grow up and we'll have buildings that are for very specific purposes. It's an isolated habitat. And the one thing I know about isolated habitats is it's great to exist there, but it's certain to collapse. And so I've been looking around. I've been looking for an alternate model. And I had a professor in graduate school, Michael Graves, who said, "You know, Bart, there are no new ideas in architecture." And I never knew what that meant, but I started thinking about it. I'm like, I think what he meant was there are lots of existing patterns. You just have to find the ways to take those existing patterns and deploy them to new use. So here's an existing pattern that I'm interested in: the informal settlement. And this is a favela in Brazil, or in Turkey they call them geçikondu, which means build overnight. And favelas are a completely different pattern of organization. They're built out of extreme necessity. They're built very quickly, but they're constructed in a way so that, say we take a piece of property that everyone has agreed this is a good piece of property. Favelas look at the margins. They look at the stuff around this property, and they start to refigure it. And they're not following any codes or restrictions. They're just building. So it's one symbiotic structure dependent upon another, dependent upon another. Everything all mixed up, everything working together. And, you know, it's not a pattern without problems. Obviously, when two habitats come in contact with each other, sometimes conflict happens, and certainly favelas have been prone to extreme violence at times. But this, the largest habitat, or the largest favela in Brazil is called Rocinha, and Rocinha has 3 neighborhood associations now, and it also has numerous clouds of NGOs that provide daycare, medical care, and security. And so as a result, you don't really lock your doors in Rocinha. People know each other, they work together. It's not independent, but in some ways it's a freer pattern. If one person has a television set, then that becomes the instant community theater. Another person has a washer and dryer, it's an instant laundromat. And so that's the way this works, the symbio habitat. And so I wonder if there's another kind of model that we can look at other than the dependency model, and I would argue it's the interdependency model. We need to start looking more at this issue of how we connect habitats together. These are a couple projects that my partner Beth Blowstein and I are working on in the studio. This was a competition for a youth hostel in Barcelona, and we looked at this project and we said, it's a great tourist site in Barcelona, but we think it can do more. So what we did was throughout the program, we said we're gonna double it. We're gonna make it a youth hostel and a boutique hotel combined. We're gonna thread the 2 programs through each other, and both of them had amenities, but now we're gonna make super amenities where people can mix. And we also thought about it as an economic model. Maybe young travelers traveling to Barcelona could get a small place to stay in the youth hostel in exchange for doing some work in the hotel. And this is another project that we currently are working on with a nonprofit no-kill animal shelter. And it's really like 3 or 4 habitats all combined together. There's a thin line of circulation, which is the only place that the potential adopter moves through. And it's a way of, first of all, separating 2 habitats that don't get along so well, cats and dogs. So we kind of organize the dog environment on the horizontal and the cat environment as a kind of climbing vertical. And as you move through, you can see everything, but we're also careful to keep these worlds separate. So we're using film on the glass so that the cats can see the fish in the aquarium, but the fish can't see the cats. And the dogs can see the cats, but the cats can't see the dogs. So interdependency, I think this is the world that I want to live in. There was someone who brought up live until you die. If I'm going to live to be 104, I want to live until I die. I want to live in a vibrant place, and I think this is the model. And those Siberians who were stranded and set adrift on the ice floe, it's totally bogus. I cannot find a single scholarly anything to support the claim. You cannot trust students. You definitely can't. But I will tell you that they keep me young, interconnected, and blissfully interdependent. Thank you very much.